My name's Jesse Martinez. I'm with Matsui International. Everybody hear me okay in the back? Good. All right. I'm going to honestly say this is probably one of the biggest groups I've talked to ever. So thank you, Canada. I'm feeling that warm welcome here. This is my second time in Canada, and I'm really excited. This is awesome. And how many of you here to learn about water base? It's good. Good. The rest, we're here to learn about screens, right? That was more important. Well, that is very important, and I really appreciate Keith. I've known Keith for a long time, and by far, that is probably one of the most important talks you'll have today. Okay, without Prepress, you can't print successfully and with good quality. So I'm really glad Keith is here, and he took that portion of it away from my seminar here, because I do emphasize that, and I will emphasize that Prepress is very important, and you'll see here that I bring it up, okay? So art department, Prepress, equipment. If we don't get it right from the very beginning, out here, it's not going to work. And then all you're going to have is everybody pointing their fingers at each other, right? It's your fault, your fault, your fault, okay? One thing also I'd like to emphasize in our industry, teamwork is very important. Communication, trial and error. There's no magic in this. One guy is not going to solve your problems. I keep hearing Jesse's a water-based guy, Jesse's a water-based guy, but at the end of the day, there's only one Jesse. So trial and error. Today, what I want to do is help educate, build confidence, and get you guys excited about printing water-based. Hopefully, after today, you're willing to go back, okay, and do some testing, some trial and error, some sampling of it. I am not here today to convince you to convert your entire shop to water-based. That's not what I'm here for, okay? I'm here to help you add another option for your customers, okay? Because at the end of the day, you got to provide solutions for your customers. They're the customer. They're going to ask you what they want, I go to shops to talk about water-based and say, it's not going to work here. My customers want that bulletproof feel. They want that heavy feel. They're in the skate industry, They want these big, long shirts with big prints. That's not water-based, okay? You got customers that do marketing that they just need a quick print to go out there and, give it away. Could be water-based, could be plastisol, okay? It's what works best for you and your shop and your customers. My goal today, again, here is to just show you some other options that you can offer, okay? How many of you are plastisol printers? How many of you are screen printers? Amazing, huh? You guys are all screen printers. You're not plastisol printers, you're screen printers. If you're a screen printer, you can print anything, right? You can put any ink on that screen and print it, right? So that's one thing I like to always clarify, okay? Because I get phone calls, they're like, hey, I'm a plastisol printer. What does that mean? That you print plastisol? You screen print plastisol? Yes. But the reality is you're a screen printer, okay? So there's no reason why any one of you cannot print water-based or solvent-based or UV or, People print cardboard boxes with water-based, to label their boxes. That's a screen printer. I've been in the industry about 27 years now. From California, live in Arizona now. And Canada's convincing me to find a vacation spot in the summertime because it gets really hot in Arizona. So Canadians go in the wintertime to Arizona. The Arizonans should come to Canada in the summertime, right? So I think I'm getting motivated to spend more time out here is what I'm trying to say. Maybe not a month or 2 months or 3 months, but maybe a week or two at a time, okay? What Zach and RB Digital is doing here for all the screen printers is amazing. And as a vendor, we really appreciate that. It's very difficult. I see all of you guys. I don't know how many shops are in here, but if I was to go to every one of your shops, probably be 5, 10 years maybe, you know? So these opportunities are very important, okay? It's a big group. When we get out to the press, it's going to be very difficult for all of you to be involved. So let's try to rotate around, okay? See what's going on at each print head without getting hurt, you know? And definitely I'm going to be around to ask questions. If I can't get to you this weekend and you just want to save it for a later time, we can set up some appointments. And then we can get on the phone, and then we can kind of go over what you got going on. We have different size shops in here. Manual printers, how many manual printers? How many automatic printers? 1 automatic. 2 automatics? 3? 4? 5? All right, so about 5. Anybody more than 5? No, right? Good. So as you can see, we have a variety of different type of printers here. Water-based, a lot of people are afraid to print water-based because it dries in the screen, right? That's what everybody hears. Out here, it's really cold. So the temperature is dry. So that's also going to help accelerate that drying in the screen. So it's very important to understand your environment and where you're working and everything that's around you, okay? How many of you guys do DTF? How many of you guys have a controlled environment? Right? It's important, right? Why do we not have controlled environments for screen printing? Money, right? So a lot of people don't realize that even whether it's plastisol or water-based, there's issues with both ink systems. You know, it's just plastisol is more forgiving, okay? Where water-based is more labor-intensive, you got to be paying attention to it. It's considered a solvent. Have any of you guys ever worked with solvent inks or UV inks? Okay, they dry in the screen a little bit faster, right? That's really what water-based is. But I'm hoping to convince you all that there is a good way to work with it if we can work fast and not stop, okay? There's certain times of the days that work better than others to print water-based. So it's just knowing and understanding when is the best time for me to use water-based. As you can see here, I'm not going to go over prepress too much, okay? But I do want to emphasize that prepress is very important. The type of emulsion, squeegees, pressure, off-contact registration and production, containers. How many of you guys leave your buckets open, plastisol or water-based? Big no-no, okay? How many of you guys leave your plastic on the screens? No. Contamination, also, when it's humid, plastisol is absorbing moisture, and that can affect the performance of plastisol. Water-based, absolutely not. You cannot leave water-based out in the open. You can't leave the containers not covered. I went to a shop recently, and this is where I can help a lot of you. I travel a lot. My territory is 1/3 of the world, I say. From Canada all the way down to South America, Mexico. I go to a lot of shops, I see a lot of things, I see a lot of good ideas. So I like to share that with as many people as possible. One of the ones I've seen recently, people were using saran wrap or shrink wrap over the buckets, you know, because it's quick, and just to seal it and protect it. So if you run out of lids, that's not an excuse. Go get some shrink wrap. With water-based, people use wet towels, and they'll just put it over the bucket, just to keep that moisture trapped on there, okay? So just little things like that. Spray bottles, that's your best friend, okay? When it comes to water, is Canada hard water? Right, a lot of hard water in Canada. So whether you're reclaiming screens or you're using water on your press, highly recommend filtered or distilled water, okay? And I learned this from a guy that was trying to sell me a water softener. He goes, come here, try the hard water and try the soft water. Got some detergent or some soap. And he showed me how it works better. It lasts longer and you use less product. So same thing, same concept. If you can control that, the quality of your water, you know, using distilled or filtered, highly recommend that. But spray bottles, because we always want to be adding moisture to the ink as it's drying. What you're going to see in water-based ink and how we know it's drying on press, it's going to be glossy. The ink is going to be glossy. So once that gloss starts going away and starts getting like a matte finish, that means the ink is starting to dehydrate. Viscosity is going to start going up. So we got to pay attention to that. We got to keep an eye on that on press or even in the buckets. You know, if the ink doesn't look glossy in the bucket, it probably needs to be rehydrated. Okay? We normally don't recommend water in the bucket to rehydrate. We try to use fresh product to rehydrate. And the percentage I recommend is 80% new product, 20% of production product that can be reused. And you mix that together and that'll rehydrate the ink enough. Okay? Some people do 50-50. I think 80-20 is a better solution. Spray bottles are for production. When you're in production, you're printing, it's flooding, and you see that gloss going away, you want to mist it. You don't want to spray it and overload it with moisture. You just want a couple of mists, print, a couple of more mists, print. And we'll show that, you know, when we get into the hands-on. Off contact, 3 to 4 millimeters on the press. Probably a little bit less than plastic. Okay? So, you guys all familiar with that movie, Men in Black? No? Remember that pen that erases everybody's memory? I got one of those. I'm going to use that on you guys today. Okay? Everything you know about plastisol, when you're working with water-based, forget about it. Okay? It's totally the opposite. So whatever you think is correct, just do the opposite, and it probably is going to work better. Does that make sense? So we're going to be saying a lot of things that are not going to make sense if you're a screen printer that prints plastisol. But there's a good reason for it. Viscosity is different. It's transparent ink. It's going to be easier to print with. You know, so squeegee angles might be different. Squeegee speeds are going to be different. So please pay close attention to what we're going to be doing out here and recognize the differences. Okay? And when something doesn't work, we always go right back to what we know works. You know, that's just human nature. So if something is not working, we got to find out why. So again, Keith earlier talked about stencil thicknesses, EOMs, mesh, different threads in the meshes. All that is going to help you with water-based printing. Personally, I'm a big fan of the thin thread. I feel like the thin thread allows you to push the ink through even when it starts drying and opens it back up a lot easier. Okay? Something that I want you guys to visualize why thin thread is good, whether it's plastisol or water-based. I always like to use the example of the tuna cans that are short and low profile, and then the Campbell soup can. It's tall, the profile is tall but narrow, right? So we fill that up with ink, we slam it on the table. Which one's gonna leave more of the ink down? The tuna can, right? No? It's wider, so it's going to release better. So that's what you're kind of seeing when you're printing halftones or printing something that is thinner. It's going to release better. If it's too thick, especially with the water base, it's designed to dry, so it's going to want to stick to the side of the walls of the, and it's going to make it more difficult, and it's going to start shrinking on you. Water-based can be printed from anywhere 110 to 305, but because of the lower viscosity, I would even say 110 is going to be more for special effects, things would have bigger particle sizes or are just higher viscosity. I would say 160 to that 180 range is pretty standard. 230 is the max I would recommend. The only reason we have 305 is because we do have ink that will print all the way to 305. But there really isn't any reason to go that high in a mesh count. And if you do, it would probably be a thin thread, and it's very dangerous to work with 305 thin threads. Okay? So for all of you, I would recommend stay between that 110 and 230 range. Very important. The other thing you're going to find with water-based is that it does the opposite. It acts the opposite of what plastisol does. Plastisol has dot gain, right? The reason plastisol has dot gain is because it doesn't dry like water-based does. So if you're stepping on it, all you're doing is smashing it and it starts gaining. Water-based, because of the heat on the pallets or because it's a solvent, will start drying a lot quicker or immediately. So then you start getting dot loss. And this is very important, especially if you have an automatic. You know, if you have an automatic and you're printing really slow, really slow, the squeegee's moving slow, okay? That contact of the mesh, the ink, to the hot pallet is transferring right over, and that's what's causing it to dry. So with water-based, you want to print double stroke fast, okay? Viscosity is low enough to shear better than plastisol. So this is a very important procedure I want you to keep in mind, okay? Water-based is about printing fast, getting in, getting out as fast as possible, okay? You can't take your time with it. Airflow, very important in your dryers. How many of you have electric dryers? Small ones? Yeah? So those are not the best for water-based, but we do offer a air dry catalyst that you can put into the ink that will allow you to run it through the dryer, you know, at whatever speed, whatever temperature, but within 48 hours, it should cure, dry, okay? So that your customers can wash the garments and not have a problem with wash fastness. So we do have solutions. So I'm not going to discourage you of not using water-based because you don't have the proper drying system. There are solutions out there that work very well, okay? But we normally do recommend good airflow, whether it's electric or gas, and then the longer the tunnel, the better for water-based, because we want to evaporate the moisture out of them. Water-based needs to dry, not cure. So we don't need to hit a certain temperature. It can literally dry, you know, by keeping it in the dryer long enough. Flashes, again, whatever you do with plastics, with water-based, you don't need your flashes to be too hot, and you don't need them to be too long. If your pallets are preheated and they're warm already, then between the pallets and the flashes, that's going to help the water-based flash, you know, much quicker. So the minimal amount of heat that you can maintain around the equipment and the shop, the better it's going to be for you to be able to run water-based in your shop, okay? So always be conscious about your environment, because flashes can cause a problem, even for manual printers. You know, we got the flashes that stay on all the time over the opposite side there. That heat is radiating all the time. And then when you're moving your screens, that screen sometimes ends up atop of the flash, right? And then the ink starts drying closest to the flash. Then I get a phone call and says, hey, Jesse, your ink's drying too fast. What can I do? You know? Another good example that happened to us yesterday, which is very good. You guys don't get much sun out here, right? But yesterday we got a little bit of sun coming through the windows directly into one of the screens that we were printing. And that acted like a magnifying glass. If I was in Arizona and you called me and said, hey, your ink's drying fast, I never would have guessed that that can dry the screen. But I've physically seen it here yesterday, and it's something that I want to share because look around. What's causing it to dry? And what made me realize it is because it was wet on half of the screen and it was dry on the other half. How does that happen? Why is this drying faster than this over here? So always look around and see what can be causing that. Okay? I put my hand right underneath that ray of sun coming in, and you can feel the heat coming right through that window. And that's from up there coming down. Okay? Fans in the summertime. We get hot, right? What do? We put fans right on the machine, on the loaders and offloaders. That can cause a problem. Okay? Water-based is air dry. Any kind of airflow, can cause it to dry. Putting your flashes too close to the screen. If you have an automatic, the left-hand side of the screen closest to the flash, you're going to notice the ink drying quicker on that side. Okay? So just little things like that. If you have the availability to move the screen away from the flash, put a cooling station there, that's what I would recommend. Okay? So you just have to be more conscious about your working environment with water-based, and it'll get better. Why is water-based becoming more popular? Okay? Better yet, why does majority of the world use water-based? Except North America. Canada, US, we're the only ones not using predominantly water-based. Okay? In the US, we're about 90-95% plastic, 5-7% water-based. Here in Canada, I think it's probably majority plastic. But other parts of the world, it's the opposite. 90% water-based, 10% plastic. But the real reason why a lot of people use water-based, first of all, water-based was actually the first ink system that screen printers were using to decorate garments. Okay, when plastics came out, especially in the US, we're like, what? We can leave it in the screen? We don't have to clean it? What happens is that just keeps piling up, piling up, piling up. You keep buying more screens, and the distributors love you guys for buying more screens, right? Chris Smiles likes you guys, Now the trend is more reclaiming, more recirculating the screens because it takes up space, okay? The other thing is, what's the most expensive thing in your shop? Huh? Space. What else? More expensive than space? Labor. Okay? How many of you guys calculate your labor cost? Yeah? So labor is the real big cost in your shop. Okay? And it's very important to understand what that labor cost is. I say operational cost because there's a lot more to labor. So labor is one of the top priorities in your operational cost. I go to a lot of shops and they're like, well, how much is your ink? Who cares how much it is? It's pennies or less than a penny compared to your labor cost. So, when you leave ink in the screens, you try to put it back up there. I've been to shops that they mix ink inside the screens to make colors. It's like, it doesn't make sense to me. It doesn't make sense. Or they go and they buy packing tape to tape the screens and then leave all the residue on there. Then they're fighting it when they're trying to reclaim it. How much is that costing you? Is there really that much of a savings going packing tape versus the correct materials and tools? No. Okay, so it's all about efficiency. And I think you're going to hear most of us say that today. Okay. But we are seeing a lot more automation from the art department. Scary, but even from the art department, we're starting to see more automation. That fancy word AI, right? It's coming. It's coming. Prepress, we're getting more automated in the prepress area. Very important. And now we're going more digital. There's a lot more digital going on. So we definitely have to consider and think about how to become more efficient so you can compete against all this technology that's coming in. Okay? So very important. But water-based. known for its soft hand. I got some samples back here. I was gonna bring them to pass around, but I don't wanna, we got a limited time, so I'm just gonna go through this. But in the back table back there, we have some samples that I brought, that I had in Long Beach. You guys are welcome to go through them, take a look at them. Have any questions, be happy to answer any questions. But soft hand is probably one of the main reasons. People are going to the stores, they're touching shirts. Every screen printer does this. I'm guilty of it. They stretch it, they touch it, they try to rip the shirt to see if it cracks. You know, we actually ripped the shirt yesterday, trying to see if it was cracking. But people feel something soft, then they come to you and be like, I want this kind of quality. And they consider that quality premium. So this could be an advantage to how you can increase your profit margins by using a product that is considered premium just by it being softer hand. Matte down, excellent matte down properties with water base. You know, when you print plastic, you get a lot of those fibers stand up, right? And it gets bumpy and rough, and then you're wondering, you know, why is that happening? Especially when you're printing in a automated environment. When you rub a balloon on your hair, right, helium balloons on your hair, and you pull it out, what happens? Hair stands up, right? We're using rubber squeegees. You know, there's some polymers in the emulsion. We're using a liquid plastic. You know, that can create static in a dry environment. Okay, and these are things that we don't take into consideration. To remove static or avoid static, high humid environments, right? So because water base is humid or water, that helps be a little bit more consistent on the matting of the fibers of the shirt. That water will just automatically make those fibers sit down and lay down flat a little bit easier. And then we have a lot of tools like you'll find out today, like the Stampinator, the hot heads. I mean, I've seen even some irons out there where, you know, they iron it down to try to hold the fibers down. Okay, so if fibers is a problem, you know, make sure you're using some tools to keep that nice and smooth. At the end of the day, whether it's plasticine or water-based, if you can keep that print smooth, that will give it the impression of a soft hand feel. Okay, and there's a lot of additives now as well to help improve soft hand. Water-based is lightweight, breathable, PVC free. Okay, how many of you guys have heard also water-based being eco-friendly? Right? It's not. It's not eco-friendly. Okay, it is sustainable. Okay, the only reason they say eco-friendly, that's a marketing scheme made by the brands to be able to say we are eco-friendly company. Okay, but all it really is a restriction of certain chemicals that people consider bad, and us not being able to use those raw materials or chemicals. Eco-friendly would be a plant-based ink. Okay, so it's very important to know the difference between eco-friendly and sustainable. And then now the fancy word is PVC free. Okay, we're all trying to help the environment by reducing the amount of plastic that's out there. You know, so just consider that if your customers are looking to be a PVC free business, you know, or sustainable business, water-based could be a good solution for that. Matsui is introducing a new product that is made of biomass raw materials for the brands, because the brands are trying to go now more eco-friendly. But there's no way we can do that at 100%, unless you're okay with the design falling out at the first wash. Okay? It's not feasible. So right now what they are pushing for is to be a minimum of 25% plant-based, or we call it biomass. So that's just 75% sustainable, 25% eco-friendly. So that's one step closer to being eco-friendly. Okay? So that's out there. I know I said price doesn't matter, but it is more expensive. It's going to be 2 to 3 times more expensive. Okay? So you have to make sure that you understand that and you bill it that way. Excellent for fine detail. Because we get that dot loss, we retain dots better, we hold detail a lot better. So you're going to find that your simulated process jobs, your CMYK jobs, or your really fine detail jobs are going to look really nice and clean, okay? Because of the way water-based works, since it dries. Always a matte finish with water-based, or majority of the time. Special effects, basically everything you have in plastisol is available in water-based. Puff, and some of them are like oxymorons, you know, we want soft, right? But we have puff, we have self-cracking inks that crack when they dehydrate, they'll automatically just separate. And I'm sure somebody created that by accident, you know, they forgot, they left the raw material out and they're like, why is it cracking, you know? So now we sell it as a crack base and crack HO. Don't judge me, please. I didn't make the names up, Japanese did. Water-based has good yield, okay? So you do get a little bit more of a yield with water-based because you're printing faster, you're thinner stencils, and you can go a little bit higher mesh count in certain cases as well. So it has very good yield. For low temp, I'm seeing a lot of plastisol that are low cure, right? Low temp. Water-based is naturally low cure. So this could be another option for low cure, low temp, and maintain the soft hand possibilities. Now, a lot of people who printed water-based before knew water-based as an ink that could not print on dark garments. It was only for light color garments, or if you use discharge, right? The discharge would remove the dye, and we'll talk a little bit more about that, but remove the dye and then re-dye the fabric again. So those were the two main products that were most popular in water-based, was light color fabrics and discharge. Well, because we lost so much market with plastisol being introduced, we got fortunate that a company like Nike, Under Armour, Adidas said, we got to go PVC free. So there is PVC free plastisol solutions, but unfortunately they print so many colors, you know, they had to find other solutions that would allow them to print wet on wet, you know, 2 or 3 colors wet on wet. They also needed solutions that had stretch, high stretch. It doesn't sound like water-based would be a good solution for that, but believe it or not, water-based actually has some really, really excellent stretch as long as you build it or stack it, okay? Once you stack it and you get it above the fabric, the water-based inks that are called high solid acrylics are strong enough to withstand elongation, okay? So I think we just naturally think that water-based has to be printed thin into the fabric to have that soft hand feel. And it doesn't work that way. Discharge, yes. Low solid acrylics, yes. High solid acrylics is the opposite. The more you lay down, the better stretch, the better wash fastness, the better opacity, and the smoother it'll get, which gives it a soft hand. To the touch, it's going to be soft hand. So, and you can feel that on some of the shirts out there. And we can print on polyester. Because of these brands, they forced us to find solutions to print on polyester. So we also have a dye migration blocker, we have a sublimation blocker, and then we have a just real basic blocker for light colored polyesters. Again, another very good solution, water-based is another good solution for polyester printing because polyester is a synthetic and it doesn't require a lot of heat. Very minimal amount of heat on a polyester will get it hot enough to where it dries that water-based on the fabric a lot faster, a lot sooner. So again, we can work with low temperatures. If you try to dry a polyester fabric for more than 30 or 300 degrees Fahrenheit, you're going to activate that dye migration. So it's very important to stay below. We used to say 310. Now you're going to find a lot of recycled fabric that starts dye migrating around 300 degrees Fahrenheit. So now we're kind of looking at that 270, 280, 290 range to avoid dye migration. And there's some fabrics out there that we don't even know what they are. I found this in LA, downtown LA. You know, a guy called me and he goes, Jesse, what do I use to print on this? I go, well, what's the percentage content of polyester? He goes, I don't know. I go, look at the label and it'll tell you, you know? He goes, yeah, it says unknown. So it's out there, you know? So if you're not sure, back yourself up, keep those temperatures low, and use a dye migration blocker, okay? Very, very important. Because there's nothing worse than sending something out, starts dye migrating, comes back to you, and you have to replace it. So, and polyester blockers, whether plastisol or water-based, are very good as underbases regardless of what they're designed for, okay? They actually will kind of create a primer on the garment so that it creates a smoother surface to print on faster. So it's not a bad idea to use blockers as your underbase, okay? This is where it gets challenging and it turns a lot of people off, a lot of screen printers off, okay? We're trying to do better at this. Unfortunately, there's so many different demands out there that we get or requests that we get. So we're always trying to introduce a new solution, another solution for the different type of fabrics. You know, before we used to deal only with 100% cotton shirts, 50-50, and 100% polyester. That doesn't exist anymore. We got 100%, we got 92, 8%, you know, there's all these different percentages of different fabrics from polyester, cotton, nylon, rayon, you name it, okay? And unknown, right? So this is a reason why we have so many options out there. Don't let this scare you away, okay? You have to make a decision what you want to introduce to your customers first. And I actually would recommend this order here. You know, discharge is a good way to start into water-based. The drawback to discharge is it's designed to work with only 100% cotton, okay? And not all 100% cotton shirts are dischargeable. So you have to ask your shirt vendor or manufacturer if that fabric is dischargeable. Because we do have companies that will do a re-dye process. Are you guys familiar with re-dye? Yeah? That causes a lot of problems, okay? It causes contamination and it causes migration, okay? And discharge will not work on re-dye products. So if you're not sure, make sure you get some of the discharge base activated, put some on there, and make sure it's dischargeable. If you don't have any extra garments, use the inside of the shirt where it's sewn and just rub a little bit on the inside here. Okay? See if it's going to react to the discharge. And you'll know when it's a re-dye. Okay? It'll discharge and then it'll come back to a different color. And you're like, what happened? Then I get the phone call, Jesse, your ink's not working. Right? We get blamed for everything, so I'm okay with it. Traditional water base is the water base that everybody hates. You know, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, but it's still being used because it's very economical. So there's guys that are not afraid of it. There's printers that are not afraid of it. They still use it because it's an economical solution for light color garments. Low solid acrylics is what replaced the traditional water base. And I have a whole nother list on the next slide of why the water base is better now. But low solid acrylics is for soft hand, light color shirts, medium color shirts. You could use them on dark color shirts. It's going to take longer to make it opaque or get good coverage, but it's still being used because it's easy to work with. This is would probably be my next solution for you going into water base. If discharge is not an option or the fabrics you're printing on require a dye migration blocker, I would go into a low solid or a medium solid acrylic. That's going to be a good entry level into or introduction to water base. They have better open time. They can print through higher mesh counts. They have stretch in them, they have good wash fastness. Discharge does not have good wash fastness. Every time I print discharge, the first thing everybody does is they start rubbing it with their nail. That's not the way to test ink. You don't use a nail or scissors and try to scrape it. That's not a way to test ink. Or they stretch it. Because discharge is a dye process, it's taking the shape of the thread of the fabric. So if you stretch it, it's going to want to go with the fabric. That is normal, okay, with discharge. Low solids, medium solids, and high solids, those have stretch in them, okay? The least amount of stretch, medium stretch, and the high solids would have the highest stretch capabilities. That's why those are good for polyester printing, lycras, yoga pants, anything that has high stretch, you're looking at a high solid, okay? And this means exactly what it is. Low solid means the ink is not going to dry as quickly. Medium is going to be like a 50-50. And then high solids is what really is going to dry quickly in the screen. So same thing when you're thinking about mesh counts to use. High mesh, medium mesh, low mesh. Okay? I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible. A high solid would be at 110, 160s. Mediums could be 160s, 230s. Low solid would be 230s, 305s. Is that making sense? Okay. Then the newest thing we got going on right now, and these are acrylics, by the way. So the newest thing now that's being introduced, how many of you guys heard of Virus inks? Okay, when Virus came in to the North American market, they were good at marketing, excellent at marketing. You know, they marketed wow, right? What does wow mean? Wet on wet, right? The reason they were able to accomplish wet on wet was because they were using a polyurethane water base. Polyurethane was designed for nylon because nylon cannot withstand high temperatures or high heat. So with the pallets being warm, that was enough to dry the ink on the garment so that you're able to print wet on wet. Does that make sense? But they're very expensive. Polyurethanes are very expensive. So now what a lot of us are doing is we're blending the acrylics with the polyurethane. It could be a 20-80 mix, 50-50 mix, or vice versa, 20-80, okay? So I got two products here that I'm gonna use today. One is a 80% acrylic, 20% polyurethane, and then the other one's the opposite. 80% polyurethane, 20% acrylic, okay? And I know this is gonna be like, Jesus, this sounds complicated. I need to become a chemist. I hear that all the time, okay? No, take it as just information being shared out there. I'm happy to share this presentation with you as well. I can email it to you guys. It's just important to know why. The reality is, if you're just starting into water-based discharge, low solid, high solid, and you have those two options and you mix them as you need them. You can use them as an additive to each other. So the low solid, if you want to improve the opacity, if you want to improve the stretch, you want to go lower mesh count, you can start adding 5, 10, 20% of the high solid into the low solid, okay? And vice versa. If the high solid is drying too quickly on you, okay, you can start adding the low solid into it to improve the printability, right? The wet on wet printing capabilities, and so forth. Same thing with the polyurethane. You can use that as an additive, okay? I just haven't been able to get into the whole marketing of how to label it like an additive to make it easier for you, but we'll get there, okay? One thing we have done, and it's not here in Canada yet, but we're starting to work with like RFU colors like you do in Plastisol, and then those RFU colors will mix into each other, and those are made from a medium solid acrylic. So the reality is, if you don't want to mix, we do have a solution readily available now called Easy Print. That's what you guys want, right? Everybody's shaking their head. They're like, yeah, okay, now we're talking. Easy Print. That is a 50-50 blend of the low solid and the high solid. So right off the bat, you're already blended, and you can start running with that. Does that make sense? Everybody got excited. I should have just said that from the beginning, right? Polyurethanes, they are available out there, but they're very expensive. but the hand feel of a polyurethane is awesome. It feels like silicone. How many of you guys like the hand feel of silicone? So there's a Long Beach shirt on a white t-shirt over there. That is 80% polyurethane, 20% approximately acrylic. I want you guys to touch that when you get a chance, and you'll see what I'm talking about. 100% polyurethane is even better than that, okay? But it is going to dry a little bit faster, but it will allow you to print wet on wet. Special effects, again, we have puffs, we have shimmers, gold shimmers, silver shimmers, the crack base. We have glitter base, which is really nice. You can mix particles, glitter particles into our glitter base. And what you're going to find with our special effects, that like the ink, it's going to give you a soft hand solution. So that's the difference between a plastic special effect and a water base, is that you're always going to continue to have that soft hand. And then we have another category here called specialty inks. Okay? There's a off-white shirt with a bald guy in his Speedos sitting on a beach chair. That has a UV activating ink on it. So basically, if you take it outside, and today that it's sunny, if one of you guys want to take it outside and see what it does, that red UV activating ink will appear and it'll look like he got a sunburn. Okay, it's pretty cool. Very simple. One color, two color job, you know, but it has that special effect. So we have UV activated. We have, I don't like to say sweat activated because everybody goes, ew. Moisture activated ink. So that goes on clear. It only works with garments that change color when they get wet. Okay? So you can print a logo, a design, or a phrase, you know, CrossFit gyms, baptisms. That's where it's most popular. You know, it says I'm saved or something like that, you know. Or beast mode. I've seen that one too, beast mode. You know, once they start sweating, that comes out. We have a moisture activating white that you can print over a hidden image, and when it gets wet, the image will appear. We have black light ink, which is clear ink that under a black light will appear in 4 different colors. It's available. We have temperature activated ink as well, body temperature. So long time ago, when we used to do a lot of tie-dye, they used to use this and used to put your hands on it. You know, if somebody put their hands on you, it would leave the handprints on the shirt, right? So we do sell some of that specialty stuff. It's not cheap, it's expensive. Everybody always wants to sample this, show it to their customers, they get them excited. They give them the price, and I never hear from them again. You know, so now we have to charge for samples in that case because we were losing money. You know, it was just not working out. And there's other stuff out there, but most of it's going to be special order stuff. You know, we do have a dual tone metallic ink, kind of like what you see in the cars when they drive by, it changes colors. So same thing on a shirt, when you turn, it'll change colors as well. But again, special order because we're not getting a lot of people ordering that. So just water-based ink improvements, just to reiterate here, new raw material technology, resins. Matsui as a company, and I'm sure all the other companies do the same, we go through hundreds of resins, hundreds, to see which ones are the most user-friendly for us. But at the same time, one thing I will and could emphasize and assure you that Matsui is a company, with the exception of discharge, we always manufacture our products with Nike involved. They are our toughest customer that has the toughest requirements. So there's no reason for us to create a general market product and a performance product. So everything that we manufacture, we make sure that it meets the Nike standards and has the, what we call RSL, restricted substance, list certification, okay? So if that helps you with your customers to let them know that, hey, I got a product that is certified, you know, and has a certain list of products that we do not use in the inks to make it sustainable, be happy to share those certificates with you as well, okay? Most of our products have certification. User-friendly formulation and improving longer open time, that would fall under our low solids category. Additives, okay? And I believe there's another category, or another slide here on additives. This is what's really making the water-based work, okay? For manual printers as well as automatic printers. We have retarders that help slow the dry time of the ink. You can use it in the high solids, medium solids, and even in the low solids. Okay, there'll be cases, or let's just say seasons throughout the year that you might need to use some of these retarders to slow down the dry time in the screen. If you use too much, that can affect the dry time in the dryer. So you just got to be careful. I would say you start with 1 to 2% of the retarder. Water-based is high mesh printing capabilities now. Since it's not drying as quickly, we can actually push the envelope and print through higher mesh counts now. Improved opacity, that would be our high solids. Our high solids, we're designing them to have better opacity so that we can print over a white underbase, print on polyester, print over a dye migration blocker. Excellent stretch, again, high solid acrylics. You know, and I think that's what a lot of you heard for a very long time, high solid acrylics. But since then, it's been improved to medium and low solid acrylics. Excellent wash fastness, rubbing fastness, and ability to dry at low temperatures. So as you can see, we talked about a lot of this earlier today. So additives, we have fixers, which are cross-linkers. So how many of you are concerned with the dry time of water base, right? Why? Because you hear it's 3 minutes in the dryer, right? So a cross-linker, a fixer, will help reduce that down to about 90 seconds. So it cuts it in half. That also will help lower the temperature in your dryer to about 275, 270. Okay? And this fixer here is not a catalyst. It's just an additive, a cross-linker, to help improve that in those areas. Retarders is to not dry, or allow it to not dry in the screens as quickly. It slows down the drying time in the screens. Softeners is a penetrant to help the ink be able to release off the screen mesh. So even when it's starting to dry, the penetrant will help it make it slippery, kind of like silicone. So this is a good product to add to your ink to just make it more slippery. And it's going to help release from the screen mesh even when it starts drying. I use a softener as a wipe on the screens just to make it slippery, easier to clean up the water base afterwards. Top and bottom, the bottom for when you're printing wet on wet will help the ink not pick up. Very similar to a silicone. Reducers are needed because maybe a high solid or a white went up in viscosity, or here in Canada when it gets really cold, your ink's viscosities go up, right? So first thing you want to do is mix. If that doesn't work, you want to warm it up a little bit. If that doesn't work, we're going to do a reducer, okay? Reducers are also used for when you're using it in production and you want to save it to use it again. You want to reduce it because the viscosity is going to go up because it loses its hydration or its moisture, okay? So before you add water, I would definitely recommend a reducer. That's much better than just pouring water in there. And don't use the same water you're drinking, please, okay? Bacteria, right? If that bacteria gets into your ink, it's gonna create fungus in the ink. So, thickeners, we use a base and pigment system in our water base right now. So certain colors, when they have too much pigment, they're gonna reduce the viscosity. They're gonna make them more watery, more runny. And that can cause problems with opacity. So the reason we have thickeners is to raise that viscosity back up to get it to where that color is going to cover better, okay? So you're not always going to have the same viscosity with water-based when you're using a base and pigment. That's why Plastisol has moved to more ready for use, because you get more consistency on the viscosity of the inks. Does that make sense? So for now, unfortunately, water-based, we do use a lot of base and pigments, but mainly because we have so many different base options, from discharge to low solids to high solid, low solids, high solids, medium solids, and the hybrids. So by using base and pigments, you have more options of which base you want to use. And for us, it's easier to inventory as well, and for you. We do offer optional resin, okay? The resin is used mainly on discharge when you're trying to improve the wash facets, but it will increase the hand feel of your discharge. So if you're okay with that, we do have that option, but we did release a new discharge base that has better wash facets. So I would actually go to that before I start messing with resins, because you got to have a high-speed mixer to get that resin to mix in properly. And then dulling additives, not really necessary. Water-based is naturally a matte finish, so you don't need to worry too much about dulling. The dulling was mainly used more to reduce the tackiness of the ink in the high solids.